I love Spider-Man. When I was a kid, I used to wear my Spider-Man Halloween costume and pretend I was him all of the time. And it's not just me who loves Spider-Man either. My dad has loved Spider-Man his whole life. My nephews all love Spider-Man. And even the rest of my family likes the character. Spider-Man has quite literally gone on a generational run. But how? To answer that, I think we need to go way back to the beginning of the 20th century, where scientists began making breakthroughs into nuclear physics. Marie Curie was a Polish scientist who pioneered research into radioactivity, an entirely new field of science that was not well understood. At the time, there wasn't even a term for it. The phenomena was discovered by her professor, Henri Becquerel, and she had coined the term radioactive to describe the emission of electromagnetic particles from disintegrating atoms. She had spent most of her life in France researching, earning her first Nobel Prize with her husband Pierre Curie in 1903 for their groundbreaking research on radiation. She had become the first woman to win the Nobel Prize. 3 years later, her husband had tragically died crossing the road and getting run over by a horse-drawn carriage. After his passing, his position at the University of Paris was retained and offered to Marie Curie. She accepted and became the first woman to become a professor at the University of Paris, in hopes to build a world-class laboratory to honor her husband. In 1910, she succeeded in isolating radium and defined an international standard for radioactive emissions, calling it the Curie. In 1911, she earned her second Nobel Prize for discovering the elements radium and polonium, becoming the first person to win the Nobel Prize twice. Women didn't get it very easy at the time, but still, she persevered. During the First World War, her understanding of radioactivity and nuclear physics helped save countless lives and limbs with the use of her X-ray units, Little Curies. An estimated 1 million soldiers were treated with her machines. She spent the rest of her life studying radiation and researching the elements she discovered, eventually working with other powerful minds like Albert Einstein later on in her life. In 1934, she died at the age of 66 to aplastic anemia, an odd disease that likely was caused by her lifelong exposure to the very thing she helped discover and name: radiation. After more research had been done on the safety of radioactivity, they had found that her papers were too radioactive and dangerous to handle, even down to her home cookbooks. To this day, her belongings are kept in a lead-lined box and won't be safe to be around without protective gear for 1,500 years. A century later, her work has been nothing but improved upon, and things like radiation therapy have helped save millions of more lives. Shortly before her death, research on how radiation affected living organisms was conducted, and in 1927, a scientist named Hermann Muller discovered that X-rays can cause genetic mutations in fruit flies, producing new traits in the fly and even visibly changing its chromosomes. Not long later, he also discovered it can have an effect on the genetics of humans. As time and research went on, the public became more and more aware of the potential of radiation, and it made their minds wander. Could it be dangerous? Could it be used to mutate our genetics for the worse? And even, could it change us for the better? On April 18th, 1938, Detective Comics, now more well known as DC, published their first issue of the comic book Action Comics, starring the hero Superman. Becoming so popular, he got his own self-titled comic series a year later in June 1939, which was unprecedented for the time. Superman is an alien named Kal-El from the planet Krypton. He was sent to Earth by his parents to save him from the death of his home planet. He landed on the farm of Jonathan and Martha Kent, who gave him the name Clark Kent. As he grew up, Clark realized he was no ordinary boy, and he had superhuman abilities such as super strength, impervious skin, and even the ability to fly. He is essentially invincible, except for his one weakness: a radioactive crystal called kryptonite. His adoptive parents advise him to use his powers for good and to help humanity. He decides to fight crime as a vigilante and takes on the moniker Superman with an outfit to match. When he isn't fighting crime and taking on his main foe, Lex Luthor, he spends his time working as a journalist for the Daily Planet to earn a living and maintain cover, as well as pursue his love interest, Lois Lane. During World War II, Superman was selling over 1 million copies a month, and circulation of the comics had tripled. Superman had taken the world by storm. The world loved the idea of a superhero who could come save everyone, with the thousands dying every day at the time. DC fully capitalized on the trend, pumping out new heroes and stories, none of which could really reach the same level of popularity as Superman, with only Batman really getting close. Both of which were still so popular, they instantly became part of the cultural zeitgeist, getting toys as well as making TV and movie appearances. Superman was hot on the rise and it seemed like nothing could stop him. But then, it happened.
We knew the world would not be the same. Few people laughed. Few people cried. Most people were silent. I remembered the line from the Hindu scripture, the Bhagavad Gita. Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds.
World War II ended with the nuking of Japan and Hitler resigning from life. And interest in superheroes began to taper out. Comics were still very popular, and during this time, Superman made his first appearance on TV. Global tensions were still high with the rise of the Cold War, but from 1940 to 1960, the comic market was mostly ruled by crime comics. There was a lot of tension about spies and corruption during the Cold War, so saw the rise of characters like James Bond and Dick Tracy. Then came along the trippy 60s, seeing the rise of Marvel Comics, at the time named Atlas Comics, with their release of the Fantastic Four, a fantastical group of heroes, each with their own unique abilities and taking on equally unique foes, leaving many readers to wonder how they came up with so many creative characters and what it would be like to be a fly on the wall.
I've told this story so often it might even be true. I can't remember. But I was sitting and I saw a fly crawling on the wall. And I said, wow, suppose a person had the power to stick to a wall like an insect. So I was off and running and I thought, what'll I call him? I tried Mosquito Man, that didn't have any glamour. Insect Man, that was even worse. I went down the line and I got to Spider-Man.
Desperate for a hit like the Fantastic Four, in 1962, co-creators Stan Lee and Steve Ditko debuted Peter Parker, aka Spider-Man, in the 15th issue and last print of the comic series Amazing Fantasy. In the comic, we meet Peter Parker, a smart and witty, mild-mannered teen who lives with his Aunt May and Uncle Ben. We also see he is a bit of an outcast. Watching an experiment with radioactive rays, a spider had fallen into the machine and become radioactive, eventually finding its way to Peter and biting him. Peter begins to feel strange and goes outside to get some air, where he almost gets hit by a car but manages to leap out of the way thanks to his spider senses and accidentally sticks to a wall. He climbs up the wall, experimenting with his powers, and he even accidentally crushes a pipe at the top of the building with his super strength. With his newfound powers, he decides to try and make some money with it, joining a wrestling match. He pummels his competition and gets an offer from the man running the fight to make some more money. Peter goes home and makes his iconic web shooters and suit. He then began performing as Spider-Man to earn money and try and help his aunt and uncle. Afterwards, Peter's a bit of a jerk and lets a thief get away, telling the cop it's his job. He keeps performing, but then one night he goes home to see a police officer outside his house. He learns that Uncle Ben has been shot and immediately springs into action to find his killer. When Peter catches him, he realizes it's the guy he let get away, realizing if he had stopped him, Uncle Ben would still be alive. We are reminded in the last panel that with great power, there must also come great responsibility. It was an instant hit, earning Spider-Man his own series, The Amazing Spider-Man, starting a year later in 1963. Nobody had seen a character like him before, and the public's response was spectacular. People were used to heroes like Superman, who was an alien and basically invincible, Batman, who was a rich billionaire playboy, or even the Fantastic Four, who are all unfathomably rich. Spider-Man was different though. Stan Lee definitely took inspiration from his predecessors like Superman, but something about Peter Parker stuck with people and felt more real. He's an outcast, an underdog, he's hated by J. Jonah Jameson in the city, and he's not invincible. Letters at the end of the comics tended to share this sentiment. Much like Superman, Spider-Man took the world by storm, showing up in hundreds more comics, video games, toys, movies, and shows. With how many great stories have been told with the character at this point, it's not hard to believe that everyone could find something they love about him. I found myself wanting to make this video after playing the 2018 Insomniac Spider-Man game. It was so fun and the story was so good that I cried at the end. It's one of the best takes on Peter Parker I have ever seen. It made me wish the movies were even a little better. There's so much that is compelling about Peter, so much tragedy, that you could really make people feel something with the character. We've had our glimpses in the films, but this game just captured everything I love about Spider-Man. I even went back and read some of the old comics to get my fix. What sets Spider-Man apart from other superheroes like Superman is that he's extremely human. What is great about Spider-Man is he feels real, he's relatable, and he's like someone you could know, and anyone can imagine themselves behind the mask. Spider-Man has some inhuman abilities, but there's one distinctly human ability no one ever talks about, and that is that he has an indomitable will, meaning this dude will not give up. He cannot. The best Spider-Man comics are when he is up against a seemingly unstoppable force and is defeated, because it's awe-inspiring to watch how he just can't quit and finds a way to keep going. During World War II, there was a young German Jewish girl named Anne Frank. She was trapped in an attic in Amsterdam for 2 years, hiding from the Nazi invaders that were hunting down Jewish people. While in hiding, she kept a journal of her thoughts, writing things like, "In spite of everything, I still believe that people are really good at heart," as well as how wonderful it is that nobody needs to wait a single moment before starting to improve the world. She wrote all this knowing very well there were people who wanted her dead. Anne Frank's family was eventually captured, with only her father surviving. Her father then decided to publish her journal, and it gave the world a whole new perspective on war and inspired millions. The Nazis may have killed Anne Frank, but they never killed her spirit. One of the best examples of Spider-Man's human spirit is in issue number 33 of The Amazing Spider-Man, where Peter finds himself trapped in Doc Ock's compound underwater. He's utterly defeated and exhausted, and feels there's no way he can get out. But he has to, or else he can't bring a serum back to Aunt May to cure her, and he will drown. He musters all of his strength to lift the heavy metal trapping him, nearly passing out while using Aunt May to help motivate himself. At this point in reading it for the first time, I realized the metal crushing him could be a metaphor for the responsibility of being Spider-Man, how he lost Uncle Ben and could lose Aunt May too if he can't pull through. All the weight and pressure of bearing that is symbolized with being trapped. But he's Spider-Man, and he has to give everything he has to try and help. He has to believe, and he can't give up. It's a very beautiful Spider-Man moment, and it was even somewhat replicated in the Spider-Man movie Homecoming. In issue number 50 of The Amazing Spider-Man, Peter Parker is tired of the city hating him, so he decides to give up being Spider-Man. He enjoyed the relaxation until he heard someone yelling for help and instinctively went to save them. The man he helped looked like Uncle Ben and reminded him of why he became Spider-Man and why he can't stop being Spider-Man. In The Amazing Spider-Man 121 to 122, Gwen Stacy dies. The Green Goblin goes nuts and kills her, leaving Spider-Man with a bloodthirsty vengeance. Spider-Man finally confronts the Green Goblin and almost beats him to death, but while exchanging some words with the Goblin, the Green Goblin's glider comes after Spider-Man. Spider-Man dodges it, killing the Green Goblin. Spider-Man had hoped seeing the Green Goblin dead would bring him some closure, but instead, it just left him feeling empty and hollow. He could have saved him too. These comics were a turning point for Spider-Man's character and even changed the entire comic industry, with publishers willing to take more risks with their characters. This moment was also somewhat replicated in The Amazing Spider-Man 2, but the comic is way better. Which brings me to the thing I love most about Spider-Man. What he cares about most are the people he can't save, even if it was just one person. Not many heroes reflect on that. What I loved about the Insomniac Spider-Man game, also spoiler alert, was towards the end of the game, Doc Ock has released a deadly virus into the city and Aunt May is sick, but Spider-Man has gotten his ass handed to him, even needing to go to the hospital, but he immediately leaves to go stop Doc Ock and cure everyone because he can't give up that easily.
How did I let this happen?
Just got a call from the hospital. They said you went AWOL.
I need to get back to work.
The doctor said you still have 14 broken bones.
Which means I have 192 non-broken ones. Thanks for taking care of me, by the way.
At the end of the game, you defeat Doc Ock and get the serum to cure everyone from the virus. However, there's a catch for Peter. Aunt May is in critical condition and would need the serum as soon as possible. Or, it could be spared and replicated to help cure everyone who was sick. This is the moment that made me cry, because I knew he was gonna save everyone. He had to. He's Spider-Man. Still, watching him be so torn over how he can't save Aunt May, you could feel how that would eat at your soul even if it was the right thing to do. I even wanted to throw Spidey a bone and let him be selfish for the one time. I had never felt so emotional from a piece of Spider-Man media. I never realized how rough it would actually be to be him. I wish we almost felt more for the tragedies of Spider-Man, since Uncle Ben's death and that whole origin story has essentially become a joke at this point. What I think sort of sucks about Superman is that he just isn't a human. He's an alien who looks human, and on top of that, he's inconceivably strong and nearly immortal. What's so great about Spider-Man is he somehow captures the hardest and best parts of being a human while also being a very powerful superhero. I mentioned in my last video that my grandfather had passed away recently, and it has somewhat made me reflect on life and what he meant to me. To give you some backstory, my grandfather wasn't genetically related to me. He got together with my grandmother after my mom was born. Growing up, I always heard from my mom how he was the best dad, even though he wasn't her biological father. He treated his grandkids no differently. He always had a smile, and he always would play with me and my siblings when I was a kid. He would take us hunting and fishing. He was always crafting away at something in his shed and would help us learn. And I definitely will never forget the smell of waffles in the morning when he woke up early to make them special just for us. He wasn't a perfect human being by any means, and even he would say so, but he was always the type of person to help you if you needed it, and I can't think of any time I didn't like being around my grandpa. Even when I saw him a few days before he died, he was cracking jokes about how he was on the right side of the dirt and would try to ease anyone who was concerned about him. Marie Curie's work on radiation and the discovery of radium did a lot of good. It has saved millions of lives. But it couldn't save my grandfather's. My grandfather tried everything to stay alive, even doing radiation treatments. Unfortunately, nothing could save him, and he died to cancer. I always thought my mom and uncles were my grandfather's only kids. However, late in my teen years, I learned he did have his own biological kids, though they were no longer with us and passed away very young. Reflecting after his death, I realized more than ever the way he's treated us is the life he wanted to give them. He couldn't save them, so the least he could do is do the most he could for his family. He never let it show that he was hurt by it and never wore it as a wound, but I knew that had to hurt until the day he died. He never had to be such a good person with such a bad hand. It would have been reasonable to grow jaded and angry, but he was never cynical, always believed in the good in people, and would always try to make you smile. After his passing, I have realized more than ever that he is my hero. He's what makes a superhero, even if he didn't have any powers. How he treated others and how he lived is how I hope to be remembered one day. People I've never heard of before have come out of the woodworks after his passing to say he was a great man. He always left people feeling better than they were and never gave up on being the change he wanted to see in the world, and that is a superpower. Spider-Man's powers are an accessory to the humanity of Peter Parker. Not only is Spider-Man an inspiring superhero, Peter Parker is an inspiring human being, even if fictional. Superman is the best-selling comic of all time, but comics stopped selling as well not long after Spider-Man came onto the scene. Everyone has their preference, but I'm willing to bet that nearly everyone watching this would rank Spider-Man as one of their favorite superheroes, if not their favorite hero. As time goes on, I think Superman will be remembered for his impact on the comic industry and superheroes as a whole, but Spider-Man will only continue to gain popularity. Curie's work has helped save countless lives and inspired many people, including comic book writers, but without her work, there wouldn't be a nuclear bomb. An estimated 150 to 250,000 people died in the Nagasaki and Hiroshima bombings. After the war was over, people feared nuclear warfare potentially destroying the whole planet and everyone along with it. Most scientists who worked on the Manhattan Project expressed regret over creating the nuclear bomb for the rest of their lives despite it ending the war, because with such great power comes great responsibility. Thank you all for watching. The support on the channel has been crazy lately. My channel has tripled in subscribers and has allowed me to be able to monetize my videos, and you can now become a member. So I can actually make money doing this, which is awesome. I'm not super sure what to do with members at the moment, like emotes, members only content, and all that, but let me know some suggestions down below. You can become a member right now to help support me making content, but even just watching my videos is plenty. Thank you all so much for liking and subscribing. Let's get to 10,000 subs. Anyways, thank you again. It means the world. I'll see you guys next time.